Mooto, our young innovator from Zambia. Mwala, can you tell us, of course, what we always hear is, young people are not well supported, are not well encouraged, especially to go into the agribusiness sector. And you have obviously succeeded, establishing yourself and helping other young people through your cashew business. So can you tell us, what are some of the challenges that you faced, as you try to develop your business and bring along, other young people into the business?
Okay, thank you very much. It's very interesting as an African youth who's actively involved in agriculture to listen to all of you giving us all these figures and statistics about the development that has to be done in the agricultural sector. And oftentimes as young people, when we sit among ourselves and we listen to our government officials, our politicians and policymakers giving these reports and figures about the things that have to be done, we ask ourselves a question to say, what goes wrong? Because they speak so well when it comes to the reports, the figures and the information. But when we go on the ground, we are not seeing the actual work being done. Therefore, I want to come to this panel to give voice for the youth and the small-scale farmers in the developing world. I want to ask you a question, those of you that are in the congregation and are on the panel. Did you know that 60% of the African population is employed in agriculture, but yet the sector only contributes 15% to the continental GDP? In my country, Zambia, 70% of us are employed in agriculture, but we only contribute 15% to the national GDP. This is because there is very little economic activity that can be derived from the agricultural sector. But yet there are a lot of us that are involved in the agricultural sector on the continent. When I left my finance job with the British Council and decided to venture in farming, my family and friends thought I was crazy. They were asking me, agriculture is for old people. Agriculture is a dying industry. How can a young professional like you with a full ACCA qualification and an MBA decide to go into the agricultural sector? This is because there is very little development that you can attain from the agricultural sector. When you go on the ground, you realize that most rural African farmers are still using primitive agricultural methods, which are lowering their levels of production. When you go on the ground, you realize that farmers don't have access to proper established market that can give them a profit for their products. This is not just international market, but even local markets. Some farmers are not connected. They don't have a road network to take their products to the urban areas. Therefore, we have got a lot of food wastage that takes place in the rural areas. When you go on the ground, ladies and gentlemen, you realize that the contribution to the agricultural sector is limited due to the poor value addition that is undertaken on the continent. 75% of the cashew that is produced in Africa is exported to Vietnam and in Asia. This is a processing facility that could employ a number of young people that are languishing on the streets. Some of these products that are exported in their raw form are exported at very cheap prices. That does not give economic value to the actual farmers. Therefore, there is need that more investment is supposed to be done in the agricultural sector. We cannot speak about sustainable development or equality if we don't address the agricultural sector, especially in Africa. Why? It's because the key players in the agricultural sector in Africa are women. These are the ones who go and water the vegetables in the fields. These are the ones who go and pick up the cashew nuts. These are the ones who are tilling the land for the maize. The key players are the young people. These are the ones who are employed in these farms. Therefore, if the agricultural sector remains in its stagnant form, we cannot address gender equality, even youth empowerment in our communities. Now, the question is, what is it that we can do to improve the agricultural sector on the African continent? The first thing that I want to speak about is the creation of industrial clusters. I think all the other speakers here have mentioned to say that most of the key players in the agricultural sector in Africa are small-scale farmers. And you realize that because these people are producing very little and they don't have enough resources to access better markets, most of the production is just limited within their farms and within the nearby areas. But if industrial clusters are formed, for example, those who are producing maize in this particular area, those who are producing millet in this particular area, those who are producing cashew in this particular area, they form an industrial cluster which can be linked with other developed markets or can be supported in terms of investment and capacity building. We are going to grow the agricultural sector on the continent. The second thing is value addition, brothers and sisters. We have to make sure that we should add more value to the things that are produced on the agricultural continent. I've already mentioned about the cashew industry. This is a lucrative industry that can employ a number of people on the continent. But because the cashew is exported in its raw form, there is very little economic activity that is generated from this particular industry. If they were processing plants in Ghana, if they were processing big processing plants in Ivory Coast, big processing plants in Tanzania, big processing plants in Mozambique, a number of young people would be employed in this sector, and you would realize that even when we are exporting the cashew as finished products, more economic value is going to be attained from the industry. Another thing that we need to consider is the effects of climate change and its impact on agriculture. If you will go on the agricultural on the African continent, you realize that our agriculture most of the time is centered on one particular crop. For example, when you go to Zambia, the main crop that is grown by most of the farmers is maize. Why? It's because our staple food is shima or ugali, as the way they call it in other countries. So this is the only thing that they are producing. But the effect of climate change is reducing maize production. Why? Because maize needs a lot of water. There is a specific temperature that is required for maize. Therefore, due to the effects of climate change, production levels in the maize industry in Zambia is going down, and currently there is a food crisis. Why? Because we were focusing very much on maize. Therefore, there is need of diversification of products, taking into consideration climate change. The introduction of drought-resistant crops like millets, like sorghum, like cashew nuts, like cassava. All these are industries that require to be developed. We can also consider investing in agricultural technology and scientific research. We have got a good example of young people that are working in the agricultural sector, like Eze, who's running a company in Nigeria called Aerial Industries, where they are producing agricultural drones, which are assisting in revamping the agricultural sector to increase production, monitoring the things that are there. We can also invest in self-genetic modifications, for example, vegetative propagation for cashew trees. We should also diversify development in agriculture. I want to emphasize on this point because most of the time there is a lot of money that is allocated by international corporations to develop the agricultural sector. But you realize that, let me just summarize, you realize that because most of the times the money is channeled to government only, most of this money is just spent on what? On meetings, in the high-level meetings that they are discussing about policy frameworks. They are buying big vehicles, but yet the actual farmer on the ground is not benefiting on it. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, food is a basic need, and its continued scarcity is a threat to peace and security. We have to address the inequalities that are there in food production and distributing, or else there will come a time when the poor will have nothing to eat but the rich, and we are going to have a crisis. It's important that all of us work together to improve the agriculture sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Moala, for your passionate argument in favor of agriculture. No wonder you are the EDD young leader, so I can see why you have been selected as a leader. So well done. I think the points you have raised are all pertinent, really, in terms of the value addition. We have talked about that, especially you bring the issue of climate change and more challenges and more inequality being created by climate change. So I think and the need for research and innovation. I think that's something we haven't really brought up, but absolutely critical, if we are going to make any headway in the agri-food system in Africa.